Welcome, everybody. It is the latest episode of No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I'm Josh Hudson, and yes, you know what that means. When you see my not-so-attractive face before the videos, that means there's no Joe Zolo this week. He's traveling. Unfortunately, Ryan is still out dealing with some family stuff, but that's okay. Second week in a row, I've got some reinforcements. Co-hosting this week, I have Mr. Michael Sicoli, the host of the Club Fantasy Dynasty After Party show, also with IDP Guys, and of course, our esteemed guest of honor. You know her from Women of Fantasy Football. You know her from our Golf DFS show, Who's Your Caddy? And you may also know her from TrophySmack, as she's the Vice President of Marketing, Miss Kelly Singh, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and get into the show. We are previewing the Los Angeles Chargers, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Minnesota Vikings. Stay tuned.
I'll tell you what, Josh, every time I hear that intro, I am ready to run straight through a wall. And if that wall is fancy,
You did very well with that intro video, I'm not going to lie.
Every single time, I can't help but mention it. So, yeah, great intro by Josh. Starting us off, my name is Michael Sicoli. I'm joined by Josh Hudson, of course, by the amazing Kelly Singh at Kelly in Phoenix, and, of course, Josh as well at the One Hudsonian on Twitter. So, Kelly, I'll be remiss if I didn't start off with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I am at work. It's still 4 p.m. here on the West Coast, but it's a nice day. We got some good lighting.
Some people struggle to do one job. You're already doing two at once right now, so that's a good way to start us off.
It's a really crazy day, actually. So I'm surprised that I have a moment. Although I can hear Matt yelling in the area, not yelling, but loud talking.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time.
Talking but yelling at the same time, I guess.
Exactly.
And how are you today, Josh?
Oh, I love how my body says, hey, you're off 2 days. You're going to get sick. And, that's going to be fun. So, yeah, I'm powering through over here and trying to figure out how I'm going to get everything else done. But you know what? The show must go on. And Michael and Kelly, I'm greatly appreciative that you two are joining me so that we can talk about some damn fun and interesting offenses.
Yeah, and we have a great one lined up today with this show because we have three offenses that are not only going to be fantasy relevant, but among the most fantasy relevant out there. Again, touched up on the start of the show, but it's going to be the Chargers, the Ravens, and then rounding out with the Minnesota Vikings. But let's start with LA on the West Coast. So last year, 10-7, same coach staying over in Brandon Staley, but we do have a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore coming over from Dallas. The starting offense includes Justin Herbert, Austin Ekeler, who we backups with Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. You got Keenan and Mike Williams rounding out the wide receiver one room in a way, and Josh Palmer as well as rookie Quentin Johnson, and of course tight end Gerald Everett, everyone's favorite streamer, coming out there. So I want to start off with my guys, the ever so friendly plant your flags of July here. I want to start off with Josh. Josh, round us out with my guy in the Chargers.
I mean, for me, it's Justin Herbert. I mean, let's see. Over the first 3 years of his career, he has finished 4th, 2nd, and 2nd in pass attempts in the league, which is pretty damn incredible for a young quarterback. Now you bring in a Kellen Moore to run this offense, who twice led the Dallas Cowboys to number 1 in the league in total yards gained. Those offenses also ranked 10th, 2nd, 6th, and this past year 19th, and we know what happened with Dak getting hurt in total pass attempts. They're going to throw the football. What does Justin Herbert do pretty damn well? He throws the football. He averages over 31 passing touchdowns per season, 4 yards shy, I believe, of 4,700 passing yards in a year, and right now he's going as QB7. There is a case, in my opinion, that you could make because of the weapons that he has, that he should be going over Patrick Mahomes in fantasy drafts. I know it's bold.
Spicy take.
I know it's bold. But again, the yards are there. The touchdowns can absolutely be there if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and those guys stay healthy. Austin Ekeler is going to get his. When you marry the end zone, you do not leave the end zone. That's just how it goes. Austin Ekeler finds the end zone and he scores touchdowns. But there is plenty of room in this offense for everybody to score touchdowns. I am all in on Justin Herbert this year. In fact, I took him over Lamar Jackson in our Scott Fishbowl draft this year.
Ooh, in a league that rewards carry.
Yes, that is how much I believe in Justin Herbert.
Is that too spicy for you, Kelly? I want to hear that.
I mean, I don't know that it's spicy. It's his guy. That's who he's picking. But I did see in the show sheet, like there was Ryan attempting to choose Keenan Allen forever. I do like that Keenan Allen pick. That second half of the season, plenty of touchdowns, plenty of targets. But I'm going to go with my guy, Austin Ekeler, big friend of the brand. Ranking QB, ranking running back 1 or total 4 when we look at sleeper. So I think that there's a big case to be made for having Austin Ekeler again as your guy for the Chargers. There's a lot of talk of splitting targets or regression. Nobody could keep that up, but I think we've got another good year with Austin Ekeler.
And to combine those takes right there, we have an increased passing volume. Very few running backs benefit from that, but Austin Ekeler would be one that really does because of his receiving chops. And if the passing game improves, if it's more effective, someone who's lived in the end zone of touchdowns, Austin Ekeler is only going to get better with that. So Love that take. And to second what Ryan would have said if he was here, Keenan Allen is my guy, and I do support that because I took him immediately in my Scott Fishbowl draft as soon as Ryan posted his article. He was, a wide receiver 1 over the back half of the season after coming back from the injury after being so durable for so long. So no reason to expect the hamstring to be an issue. This year, I am still very in on Keenan Allen. Any thoughts on Austin Ekeler, Josh? Or Keenan Allen for that matter?
Yeah, so I'm a big I'm a big Austin Ekeler guy. I'm also a big Keenan Allen guy this year, but again, we're talking about Austin Ekeler here. So Ekeler, in my projections, I was so ready to say, you know what, we're going to have some touchdown regression. A lot of the appeal with Ekeler the last couple of years was that Lombardi system that kind of mimicked what Sean Payton did in New Orleans, where Alvin Kamara scored all those touchdowns. And that's exactly what happened. Austin Ekeler scored all those touchdowns. But now you're coming with Kellen Moore, who's had somebody like Zeke Elliott, who's kind of taken some of those up the middle touchdown runs. I really don't think there's going to be any level of touchdown regression. It's all there. The rushing touchdowns, the passing touchdown, or the receiving touchdowns. I have him at 17 total touchdowns this year, and he's 10 points above McCaffrey as my RB1 in my projections. Wow. Like, I'm all in. I'm fine if you want to take Ekeler at 1. I'm fine if you want to take other people over him. He's just going to say, you know what? I'll take the RB1 spot and cost you your fantasy team. That's fine. Works for me. So, yeah. I'm all in on Ekeler. That honestly, this Chargers offense from top to bottom is so much fun.
Yeah, there's an MVP ceiling here with Justin Herbert in terms of the pieces they've added, the depth they've had. You get Rashawn Slater back on the offensive line. That's a huge addition they didn't have last year. And when it comes to Austin Ekeler, it's such an interesting situation because originally, you guys remember when he requested a trade, I want to get out of here. And the Chargers was just like, we're fine. We're going to keep you. And now he's back. It's fine. And they didn't draft a running back. They didn't sign a running back. It's still Josh Kelly. It's still Isaiah Spiller. I wouldn't be surprised, just to bring it up now, let's say Zeke comes back, reunites with Kellen Moore. Would that change your opinion of Austin Ekeler in any way?
No.
I think it might lower the ceiling for rushing touchdowns a bit. But I think you're going from, like I said, I projected at him 11, say maybe 7. Yeah. That might,
still remarkably high.
Because again, Zeke is a very good short yardage back. He's always been that. Mm-hmm. And it's not that Austin Ekeler is getting older or anything that, they need to, conserve his energy or anything of that nature. But if you can bring in somebody to keep him healthy, by all means, why not? The running back position is brutal.
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up purely speculative. But what's not speculative is Quentin Johnson, who was a first-round pick out of TCU for the Los Angeles Chargers. So what are some expectations, Kelly, I want to start with you, about Quentin Johnson in his rookie season?
It's always difficult, obviously, when you have rookies coming in and trying to predict what they're going to do. I feel like any rookie that's been put in at that top spot for that team, they're going to expect production out of. So it's not a complete surprise that people are expecting that breakout. It's just, is there room for it to happen? I think that will be the biggest factor when we talk about a Quentin Johnson breakout season. Is there room for that to happen with the rest of this lineup?
Your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. I mean, you have a running back like Austin Ekeler who has commanded targets for 4 or 5 years now. Like, that's not suddenly just going to go away. We know how effective he is as a pass catcher. So that's one person you're competing with. Keenan Allen's been a target hog when he's healthy. He was averaging close to 13 targets per game the final 10 games of last year or something along those lines. Like, it was absurd the number of targets he was getting pummeled with. Mike Williams is going to get his if he's healthy. He's played one full season of games his entire career. But the 1 year that he went for 10 touchdowns or 1,000 yards or whatever it was, he missed one game. So even if he misses a couple games, he's still going to be a very effective receiver in this offense. And then you factor in Gerald Everett, who, again, looking from Kellen Moore, he targeted Dalton Schultz quite a bit. So if some of that translates, that's now 4 people ahead of you in the pecking order for targets. Now, the one thing I will say, Justin Herbert threw 699 passes last year. There's a very real possibility he throws 700 plus this year. So it may not matter. The targets might still be there, even as the 5th guy in the pecking order. But let's not sleep on Josh Palmer either. He had 107 targets last year. It's not that he's a bad receiver. It's just he has an uphill battle at this point. And he filled in quite admirably in place of an injured Mike Williams, in place of an injured Keenan Allen last year. So there's still a lot of room, and the rookie's going to have an uphill climb, even with all of those pieces.
And what Quentin Johnson did so well in college was making the most of his touches. So even if he doesn't get 8 catches a game, 5 catches a game even, he could turn 4 into 60 and 1 on a dime, because what you watched at TCU every time was him catching the ball, doing a quick little spin, and before you knew it, he was 60 yards downfield despite weighing 300 pounds as a receiver, because he's essentially a bigger Deebo Samuel, and don't at me on that, please. But on the topic of Josh Palmer, that was Joe's guy going off the board as the wide receiver 91. Joe still on board with the guy that I know I have butted heads with him more than enough times, but has the time passed for Josh Palmer to take the next step in this offense? It feels like it's passed him by. Kelly, any thoughts there?
I would consider Josh Palmer, this is probably for the next section we were going to dive into, but more of a value play, a waiver pick, somebody you're going to fill in. It's not necessarily your week-to-week guy.
Yeah, I wrote a little blurb in Ryan's Keenan Allen article, which you can find on clubfantasyffl.com. Basically just saying that he's a waiver wire guy in redraft, but I have zero issue if you wanted to take a couple dart throws on him on your best ball teams, because that's really where he will shine. He's going to be an injury replacement. He's not going to be an every week target guy at all.
He's one of the rare.
Exactly.
Sorry, Kelly.
No, I was just saying, he just said what I said, but far more eloquently. Exactly. He's just
I don't know about Josh Hudson and eloquently being involved in the same sentence together. That just doesn't work for me.
I'll replace eloquently with, I don't know, maybe handsomely, because you slided your looks in this intro, and I didn't call you out before. I want everyone to know, loud and proud here, that Joshua Hudson is a good-looking guy. I don't know what this type of negative type of stereotype being thrown around at the top of the show. Either way, Zach throwing in the chat, Isaiah Spiller, August 2022 to August 2022, because that is incredibly correct, as well as February 2022. I'll throw in that in there too. But before further ado, I want to mention Joe is also an IDP guy, and as I am also an IDP person, you want to shout out Eric Kendricks, which is an excellent choice, taking over for Drew Tranquil in the linebacker room. That saw him be Drew Tranquil, that being a linebacker one last season because of a sheer ridiculous amount of tackles that the Chargers were forced into putting onto one linebacker because the rest of the room wasn't proven. Guess what? Same case here in 2023. So, yeah, going to be a good season from Eric Kendricks, who's still going too late in drafts. I might have jumped on your DFS segment, Kelly, but do you have any DFS things you want to throw out besides the Josh Palmer love?
It's really interesting because my comment was basically going to be that there's not necessarily a value pick for this team. It's so deep and in talent. I feel like it's not going to be like you're going to get anybody on a steal. So it probably would be Josh Palmer. Sorry about the excited screaming happening around me if you can hear that, but it would probably be Josh Palmer if we're looking for a value pick in DFS from the Chargers. Otherwise, you're going to end up still paying top dollar for Herbert in any matchup, still paying top dollar for Keenan Allen or Austin Ekeler. So that still can end up being a value. I don't want to say that expensive players are not a value. Just make sure you're looking at what are you going to get out of this buy.
That's a great point. I honestly completely forgot to bring up Mike Williams before. And I honestly think he's probably the biggest question mark on this Chargers offense in terms of cost relative, what you're spending compared to what you're trying to get out of it. And I think a lot of people have been incredibly burnt by Mike Williams, but we all know the talent that's there, and it can totally coexist with Quentin Johnson in that play style. So, Josh, are you in? Are you out? Are you hands off? Are you hands on of Mike Williams?
For me, it comes down to price. And again, it's not because you don't trust the talent, because the talent's there. I mean, you're not the 7th overall pick in the NFL draft for no reason, right? Like, he's good at what he does. He's just always had a very reckless play style that leads to a lot of injuries. And there were a lot of people that were kind of comping Quentin Johnston to that of Mike Williams, that basically that he's the heir apparent to that, downfield, 50-50 ball kind of player. I think there are some similarities, but I do think that Williams has more of Quentin Johnston has more of a yards after catch ability that Mike Williams doesn't. And I think that Mike Williams is a better red zone threat because I think I think Mike Williams is probably the best 50-50 ball guy in the NFL. And I don't think it's particularly close.
No arguments over here. Kelly, any disagreement on that?
Not at all.
Awesome. Always love to have that. Just quickly, this or that, because you talked about cost. Would you rather, these guys are going back-to-back in ADP, so Mike Williams or Chris Godwin?
Oh, that is so tough. I think I like Mike Williams there. I do. I think there's more upside on that.
Josh, you agree?
I'm gonna go the targets. Give me Chris Godwin. Damn, that's tough. But
that's the choice people are making in
drafts.
Drafts.
that is really tough. And like seeing where Godwin is going in drafts now, I'm like,
it's tough.
Damn, why? Like, we were really hyping Tom Brady up that much that he just lifted everybody, and now that he's gone, it's like, wow, you got no talent. Apparently, no, the dude's talented. Like, give him something. But it really is hard to get behind any kind of receiver when you've got Trask is trash and freaking Baker Mayfield throwing to him like that.
Hey,
that's
Baker Mayfield joined Michael Sicoli's SFB squad earlier today, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. Oh my goodness, it felt terrible.
Sending some prayers your way, buddy.
I drafted 2 quarterbacks with a week 9 bye. I needed something. There was no other starters. But
that's lofty goals, thinking that Mayfield's going to be starting by week 9.
That's what I tweeted. I tweeted it immediately after I picked it. But yeah, so my draft choices aside, that concludes the Los Angeles Chargers over here. Let's jump to Kelly's Baltimore Ravens. Last year, 10-7, still bringing back John Harbaugh. Todd Monken coming in, a big change from last year's, I'm completely blank on his name, but run-heavy Greg Roman. And yeah, so we're expecting a lot of changes here. in Baltimore. QB1, obviously Lamar Jackson settling the franchise tag issue. Tyler Huntley backing him up. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill rounding out the running back room. Then you got Odell Beckham, Rachaad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely rounding up the receiving room at tight ends. So, Ravens, my guy, you guys know the drill. Josh, or this time I'll start with Kelly. I want to hear your, it's also your team, fair enough. So, let's hear the Ravens, my guy.
Well, I always go with Mark Andrews, but that's I know that's another choice on our list here from another host.
It's okay.
Probably
to up. It's okay.
Purposefully.
By all means, shower Mark Andrews with praise, Kelly.
I love me some Mark Andrews. I just wrote our Look Inside article all about Mark Andrews and how this is not a regression year for Mark Andrews. I don't think we're going to see fewer yards from Mark Andrews by any means. With this new offense from Todd Monken, I think we have potential of seeing multiple tight ends. I think we may see some decoy run perhaps with OBJ out there. And how is a defender going to choose who they're going to cover? Mark Andrews' hands are made of sticky glue. I think he's still going to be dominating the team in receptions. So Mark Andrews.
I got him again. Another Scott Fishbowl pick by me, which I was so happy to get. So I am 1,000% on board. What about you, Josh?
My notes are literally this. Just listen to Kelly on Andrews. Or just head over to clubfantasyffl.com and read about him because she just wrote the article and posted earlier on Wednesday. So there's that. But to get a little bit more in depth, since 2015, Travis Kelce's been the tight end one, right? There's only one other tight end that has finished as the overall tight end one, and that is Mark Andrews. If that does not tell you that he's really freaking good at football, I don't know what will. You can talk all you want about how he has increased competition at the wide receiver position. Look, OBJ is 30, going on 31 in November, and has not played football since February of 2021. I mean, great, cool, awesome, whatever. Not really buying it. Or was it 2022? Was that when the Super Bowl was?
It might have technically been 2022. It might have been the 2021.
It was a 21 season, but okay, regardless. Zay Flowers is 5'9", and as Ryan would say, he's too short to play football. Rachaad Bateman's coming off a Liz Frank injury, which isn't always the greatest thing in the world, and he's likely going to have a slow start to the season. And let's be honest, Nelson Aguilar can't catch babies falling out of buildings from fires. Like, it's not happening here with these wide receivers, okay? They're good values, but the number one wide receiver on this team is Mark Andrews. Todd Monken.
He's been, Josh, the number one wide receiver 3 of his 5 years. And one of those was.
Did we get a freeze?
Time he wasn't number one. He was only behind Brown by I'm back. The other outside of his rookie year, he was only second to Marquise Brown by 68 yards or something like that. So basically the number one receiver all of the years, as far as I can say.
And that's the thing, is that anytime you're talking, and that was with a Greg Roman offense that never freaking threw the football. Only once in 5 years or 4 years as the offensive coordinator did he even rank in the top 10. And all of that time, all the other times, they were 26th and lower in pass attempts. This team did not throw the football, and he was averaging 120 plus targets in a season. Now you bring in an offensive coordinator that, just like you said, Kelly, is going to spread the football around. They're going to throw. What the hell's stopping this team from throwing the ball 170 times to Mark Andrews? Let's be honest. If there's any tight ends outside of Kelce that can effectively finish as the tight end one and deserve to be a second round pick or above, it is Mark Andrews. It is point blank, period. That's it.
I think he also has the trust of Lamar Andrews versus any other receiver that's coming on to this team. They connect. And as far as being under Greg Roman, in my article, I highlight how Andrews was basically the desperation play. If they weren't able to run it, if everything fell apart, Mark Andrews towered above everyone and basically can catch anything. So imagine plays that are built around a Mark Andrews.
Love it.
Plays built around a Mark Andrews. I think it's a wonderful melody that we will have to hear, maybe from our own Matt Record at some point. But yeah, Mark Andrews, I'm all in. I'm not going to add any more heat to the fire because I think the fire is hot enough. And honestly, TJ Hockenson's going way too close. But we're going to talk about the Vikings in a second. Let's stick with the Baltimore Ravens and the receiving room that Josh all but disparaged with vehement. Just, hey, I don't know. I don't know what Odell did to you.
Look,
but
their ADP right now is like wide receiver 46, 47,
Exactly.
and 53.
That's why
Believe me, I'm not the only one that does not like this wide receiver room.
Sure. So let's talk about the receiver room then, because listen, we have seen over and over again, at least when Marquise Brown there, another 5'9" receiver that did really well and has done really well and stuck around the league. But succeeded. You had Marquise Brown being a real fantasy wide receiver, as well as Mark Andrews being one. We've seen Lamar Jackson support one wide receiver and a tight end. So the only question is, who's that wide receiver? Say Flowers, OBJ, Rachaad Bateman. Kelly, any thoughts on which again, Josh brought up the ADPs. It's take your pick. It's the same cost more or less. If you're throwing your dart on, the board, which one are you landing on?
It's going to be whoever's the fastest. I would need to look at that. Where I dropped again. Dang it. We have to move. I was saying
We got to get Kelly a hard
Did I
Ethernet
make it?
connection
Am I
there.
back?
In the...
Did I ruin the show?
I think we can hear you now.
I'm trying to find a better spot. Okay.
We could have Josh
what I was
go
trying to
for
say-
the meantime. Let's see, Josh, you want
What I
to
was
bring up?
trying to say was whoever is the fastest. You got me
Who
now?
does have the fastest?
I'm ruining the show.
No, this is peak content, and honestly, I wouldn't have
Whoever's
it.
the fastest.
What are their 40
Because here's
times?
why I say
Let's try and pull
the
these up.
reason why I feel like Marquise Brown really succeeded is he was fast down the sideline. So he was getting a lot of those Hail Mary passes, those really deep passes. So, you know what? You can be 5'9" and still be that guy because you're going to be faster, hopefully. That's my logic.
Based on playerprofiler.com, the fastest 40 time would belong to the rookie, Zay Flowers, at 4.42.
That was going to be my guess.
Yeah.
And
so, and this is kind of how I would preface this, right? So OBJ did run a 4.43, but he's also 30 years old now. So you've got to think,
right.
a little bit of speed regression there. And Rachaad Bateman, I believe, was in the 4.5 range, but he's coming off of a Liz Frank injury, so he's not going to be near as fast. So I think that in and of itself is going to favor Zay Flowers in that sense. But I feel like just because of his size and how he's built, where he fits into this offense, probably is more in the slot versus outside.
well, I mean, that's what the Cardinals were trying to do with Rondale Moore, obviously, play more in the slot. And then we have Marquise Brown there still playing that long pass. So, yeah, it really depends on where Baltimore wants to put Zay Flowers. But, man, I'm excited to see this team play this year.
We could disparage the receiver room all we want. It is light years better than last year. And, even if Bateman misses again, God forbid, they have two receivers that are both better than what they had last year. So I think, it all shapes up for a much better Ravens passing offense. But the rushing game has been, nothing but It was stable. I was about to say it's been nothing but, it's been very stable, but injuries have really taken a toll. We had Dobbins missing time the year before.
What's up?
Oh, hey. Oh, I haven't seen him
Party
since
crasher.
I bought a belt from the man at the Expo last year. That's really funny. But rushing attack with J.K. Dobbins, now 2 years removed from the serious injury that was tearing almost every ligament you possibly could. Gus Edwards still there. They didn't really make any big additions to the running back room. J.K. Dobbins is the bounce back year. Is it time to start going back to where he was? Josh,
I love Dobbins. I've always been a fan of Dobbins. I mean, what do you average? 6.1 yards per carry towards the tail end of last year after the scope in the middle of the season to kind of clean out some of the issues from the previous surgery. I mean, and anytime you put an effective running back next to a quarterback with mobility the way that Lamar Jackson does, it's only going to enhance their profile. To me, the biggest thing with J.K. Dobbins and why he's not near as highly rated in fantasy circles is because mobile quarterbacks like Jackson don't throw the football to their running backs. I don't know that I'm buying this whole, we're going to scheme more balls for the running backs and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I don't buy it. I mean, it's like, and this is my issue with, the Eagles going out and getting DeAndre Swift. Like, he's a guy that's commanded targets, but now you're putting him in an offense with a quarterback that has the ability to get 6 or 7 yards instead of dumping it off to a running back and then praying that he can get 6 or 7 yards. It's just quarterbacks are people that if they feel like they can do it themselves, they're going to do it. That's why the Eagles only threw the football to running backs 70 times last year. The Ravens are typically in that 80 passes range. So unless you're telling me that Dobbins is going to have 50 targets, it's hard for me to get on board with that, like RB, like one bottom tier level. I think he's a pretty well solidified RB2. And if he gets those targets, then yeah, we can have that conversation. But to me, that's a huge if. And it is a projection beyond a projection because we've literally never seen it.
I kind of disagree in the sense that with this new offensive coordinator, I feel like there will be far less running. Whether or not Lamar wants to run or not run, I don't know if that's the case. Does the situation call for that? So I think we're going to see more RB work than QB work, footwork, if that makes sense, on purpose.
Again, I want to believe it. I really do. Because I want to see Lamar take less hits because it's going to extend his career and he's damn fun to watch. But year after year after year, they tell me in Buffalo that Josh Allen's going to stop running. That motherfucker keeps running. So why should I believe that Lamar is going to be any different? It's part of their game. It's who they are. It's in their DNA. So let's go with it.
Part of Greg Roman's game is what I
do believe the designed runs. Yes, the designed QB runs won't be there near as often. That I will wholeheartedly agree with. But again, I think ultimately that's going to just increase the scrambling aspect. You're still, you might decrease some of the overall rush attempts, but you're still, you're increasing the scrambles, which ultimately I think you get a better yards per carry from anyway, which kind of enhances his fantasy stock.
Lamar will run. I'm at the end of the day, Lamar will run because their offense has to. He's too good of a runner to not ask him to run. If I had to pick a side here, I am closer to Josh. I don't think Dobbins is going to get much look at as a receiver. That said, I do think his ceiling is a little bit higher than you think, not because of that, because we have seen, unlike a lot of rushing quarterbacks, we've seen this offense support a double-digit touchdown rusher. Again, we saw with Philadelphia with Miles Sanders. We had Mark Ingram a few years ago, go for, I believe the number was about 20 million touchdowns, and it was really good for fantasy football, my stats tell me. So I am a huge J.K. Dobbins guy. His ADP is being drafted a little bit higher than I have been wanting to take him, but I'll throw out some player profiler numbers right here. 4th in true yards per carry last year, 9th in yards per touch, 2nd in juke rate, 3rd in breakaway runs. He has always been this type of player. And he did that last year and 1 year removed. We're only going to expect only improvements when he's a couple of years removed from a really devastating injury. And with the incentive to make some money as well. There's a contract here for J.K. Dobbins who said he was going to hold out of camp, which is a terrible idea, and I really hope he doesn't do that because there are far better
He's got to
players.
prove himself.
Yeah, we haven't seen you since the first year, man. I love you, but it's not happening yet. Earn your bag. That's all I'm hoping for. Any other Ravens we want to talk about? Isaiah Likely, you mentioned before, Kelly, an increased usage potentially, had a very good rookie season by rookie tight end standards. You think you're going to see a second-year jump, even though Mark Andrews is still there?
I do. I see him being out on the field in some specific plays, especially again under this Monken offense. If you look at what he did in Georgia, he is a very tight end friendly offensive coordinator. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a two tight end offense out there, both looking to get receptions, not just blocking. So it could be a very exciting and unpredictable season. Again, on the Todd Monken offense, the tight ends that have played under Monken have been leading receivers. One of them just this last year receiving the top tight end award, which is slipping my mind late in the day here. But
hours is going to be so
exactly. Just to prove my point that he makes use of his tight ends, and both Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews are highly talented. So I would not be surprised to see Isaiah Likely have a bit of a sleeper year. I'm going to be looking at him potentially for some flex positions or even DFS play.
I do think we see a lot of 12 personnel with those two tight end sets with the Ravens this year. And we have in years past as well. And Todd Monken, again, brought up really well with his history in Georgia of what he's been able to do with those tight ends. But we have a question in the chat from Val's the GOAT and a great segue into our I almost forgot about the DFS bit. Hit me, Kelly, with your
we kind of talked about it. That was her pick. So.
I would kind of say Isaiah Likely could be a very interesting DFS pick. Another great DFS pick for you could potentially be Duvernay, which we didn't discuss, depending on scoring, especially if he ends up being the punt receiver in certain leagues that give you points for punt receiving. Duvernay would be an excellent choice for you as well. So there are quite a few good choices for you. Gus Edwards, it seems to be kind of a value running back pushing through on that goal line. We don't know what's going to happen this year. The Ravens are truly unpredictable, but I think this is the best team we've seen in a while.
I agree with that. And with Gus Edwards, somebody, 3-4 years ago, people loved taking in the 0RB route, the late round in drafts. And he also suffered a torn ACL, another serious injury. He's also 2 years removed. They couldn't believe that weekend when it happened back to back with him and Dobbins. That was terrible. But I want to bring up Joe's takes as well. He wants to back Zay Flowers. Again, a guy we've talked about here, but he also wants to bring up the IDP side here about Marcus Williams, somebody that I have been very high on as well of what he's been. He was excellent in the first half of the season, especially in leagues that reward pass defenses and interceptions on a heavier note. You can't predict interceptions to always repeat, but he's a stellar player who will get a lot of opportunity, who goes really far behind his teammate Kyle Hamilton, who I also love. But that doesn't mean that he can't be good too. Chuck Clark is out of town. Unfortunately, suffered an injury of his own, but that was with the New York Jets, and a lot of tackle opportunity from the safeties with Baltimore. So now we'll get to Val's the GOAT's comment here. A great segue into the Minnesota Vikings, bringing up ranking the three guys here of Alexander Mattison, DeAndre Swift, and Rachaad White. Josh, let's start with you of picking your trio here, your choice.
For me, this is Mattison, White, then Swift.
What about you?
And yes, I say that as an Eagles fan. For me, Madison's the only one that I actually see topping 200 carries. I know people want to sit here and put Rachaad White into this conversation. I want to go back to our Stars of Tomorrow series on running backs last year, heading into the draft when we had the diva of Devi, Katie Flower, on the show and was giving out her steak ass rankings. And Rachaad White was not part of that. She's like, I want a steak ass. I don't want chicken legs. So for that, I've been out on Rachaad White, and the dude could not push a pile. Like, I think he had 3.7 yards per carry last year. I mean, are we really sure that he's that guy? Like, I know he's kind of in line for the volume, but, you know, so many people want to say that, you know, the volumes area doesn't have any competition. You know, they threw the ball to him a lot. Tom Brady threw the ball 730 some odd times last year. There ain't no Tom Brady in Tampa Bay anymore. Why are they going to throw to Rachaad White when they can throw to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans? That's just kind of the point where I'm at. So I think a lot of Rachaad White's value is being overblown as a result of that, because so many people are like, oh, well, there's this many vacated targets. No, they're going to throw the ball probably 200 times less this year. Let's be honest. So there's all your vacated targets right there.
200. That's a big number right there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Kelly, your thoughts on the trio here?
You're muted, Kelly.
I am muted. I'm having a great show today. I'm having a hard time, deciding between Mattison and Swift. But I feel like I just love me some Swift, and it's probably going to bite me in the butt, but I'm going to go Swift, Mattison, White, and the same reasons White is in last as Josh gave. But Mattison, it just doesn't, I don't know, I'm not getting that good vibe.
There's a lot of people not feeling the good vibe on Mattison right now. It's a very popular trend to hate on Alexander Mattison because he finally has an opportunity. Like,
Is that why we hate on him?
We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for it, and now nobody wants him. It's strange, but I'd go in the order of the question here, and I love this question because every year we're trying to pick the gems out of the dead zone. That's really where you find your best values. We're not talking about the first and second round guys. It's the guys that hit in the fourth, fifth, sixth. And these guys are going in that back of the third, the fourth, the fifth. And same reasons everybody here. The only pushback I have on Rachaad White, I have my same question marks, and we brought up with on the after party last week with Joel. Baker has a very, very high career checkdown rate. I believe it's number one in the league in terms of what it was going into last season. It was around almost 12% of his passes were going to the running back. Now, that could have been schemes, could have been a Browns thing, who knows? And it didn't do much for Chris McCaffrey in the beginning of last year. But we are talking about Rachaad White here, of somebody who should be getting a lot of receiving work for a team that will be behind more often than not.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that kind of the point? If you're not going to throw the football to Christian McCaffrey, why the fuck are you going to throw it to Rachaad White? Like, let's be honest here.
There we go.
And there was only one wide receiver in Carolina, and you still wouldn't throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey. There's two really good ones, and you can make an argument that Russell Gage is pretty good too. They're all better than Rachaad White. This Baker Mayfield that we're seeing right now, he is not the Baker from like the first, second, third years in Cleveland. That Baker is long gone.
Yeah,
I've already lost all that confidence.
I've already bet on the Bucs to be the worst team in the NFL. That kind of leads to my thoughts on what I think this Tampa Bay Bucs team is going to look like. But we're not talking about the Bucs. We're talking about Minnesota, the Vikings, the 13-win Minnesota Vikings, 13-4 last season, led by first-year head coach Kevin O'Connell. And he basically calls the play. So that is, as far as we're concerned, the offensive coordinator. Again, starting offense being Kirk Cousins. Running back is Alexander Mattison, not Dalvin Cook, who was released a month ago. You got Ty Chandler, Keenan Nwangu, as well as the rookie there, Dwayne McBride, mixing in. And Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, first-round rookie there. KJ Osborn and TJ Hockenson running out that receiving room. Irv Smith is now a Bengal, so TJ Hockenson firmly has that room on lockdown. If there were any doubts, there were not. So my guy for the Minnesota Vikings, Kelly, I want to hear you're my guy for the Vikings. Horns up, all that. That's Texas, but also with purple, you know.
Also with purple. Yeah. As my little tag here says, tight end hoarder. I'm definitely going with TJ Hockenson as my guy here. And talk about some monster fantasy point weeks. It wasn't just a few sporadic here and there throughout the season. There was a good handful of monster points per fantasy game with TJ Hockenson. So I love it. I think it is the way to go. I'm going to definitely try and get me some Hawk in addition to Andrews, if possible.
I feel so many fantasy team names just growing from what you just inspired by what you just threw out there. So I'd love to hear it on the show. Josh, any thoughts on Hockenson?
I like Hockenson in this offense. I've never been the biggest Hockenson guy. I think he came into the league, really solid blocker, quality receiver, but nothing overly fantastic. And I felt like he was kind of overdrafted just because of need. And then, he had some spurts in Detroit where he was really good. And then he would kind of get hurt. But then he kind of became like, in a way, George Kittle, right? Like Kittle's really good, but he kind of does this because it just.
But he's not in Detroit. He's here in Minnesota.
Kelly, you're getting the story, okay? I'm laying the groundwork for the story here. So then he gets to Minnesota, and all they have is Justin Jefferson to throw to, so he becomes the default guy, which is exactly what we saw O'Connell do in LA with Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. My issue with Hockenson going into this year is that they went and drafted a wide receiver in the first round. That kind of tells me that they don't want TJ Hockenson to be that second target. They need somebody that can be more of a mismatch instead of a safety valve. So I think that is going to diminish some of those excessive targets that we saw kind of towards the end of the year. But I still think he has that like tight end 3 ceiling, which I feel like is right where he's being drafted at, so I'm okay with it.
Where I like TJ Hockenson, and I will say, being a mismatch, that's a good role too. But TJ Hockenson, Adam Thielen is now gone. That's firmly gone. He was second in red zone receptions last year, only behind Justin Jefferson, who was number 1. That's 15 red zone receptions off the board for an offense that was top 5 in passing numbers, and I have this all in my head because I just finished the Jordan Addison piece of a look inside that's going to be coming out, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But Hockenson has a lot of opportunity to make that big step in the red zone. I don't know if Jordan Addison is that type of guy. KJ Osborn certainly isn't, and Justin Jefferson can only get so many looks. I say that now. I could eat my words on that, to be honest. But listen, Hockenson was incredibly productive last year downfield, second in receptions, 4th in yards after catch, 3rd in unrealized air yards. So there's just so much that could be even more in an offense that is going to be passing the ball like crazy. And I really do think they're going to wear Kirk Cousins' arm out this year, especially with how bad the defense is. And I don't think any of us expected to make significant strides. But let's go to the receiver room. I don't even think we need to talk about Justin Jefferson too much. Is there? I guess the only thing we could talk about here is there a draft spot too high to take Justin Jefferson?
No.
Is there a 100?
Is he your 101?
I would pick him 1. I picked him 1 last year. I'd pick him 1 again this year.
As would I, Josh.
I think you can make the case. When I did my projections, Jamar Chase came out as my wide receiver 1, though. So for me, it just boils down to touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, while he gets a lot of red zone targets and end zone targets, he does not score touchdowns the same rate as other players, like a Cooper Kupp, like a Jamar Chase. So for me, he can stockpile all those yards, a lot of those catches, but I would still value those other 2 over him. But again, you can, it's kind of, to me, he's the Patrick Mahomes of wide receivers, right? Wide receiver 1 is completely in the realm of possibilities for Justin Jefferson. But if he ended up finishing wide receiver 3, would you love the fact that you spent the first overall pick on him?
I think people would be content. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be content, but it's like, damn, I could have had so-and-so that went 4 picks later. Like that, and that's kind of the point that I'm getting at. So yeah, I don't hate Jefferson. Love him. Have him on quite a few dynasty teams. Have traded way too many draft picks to get Justin Jefferson on said teams. But again, it's just, I think there's that range of outcomes because of the lack of touchdowns.
There is no too many picks to be sent for Justin Jefferson. I will push back.
And let me rephrase that. When I say lack of touchdowns, I'm saying the lack of double-digit touchdowns that you see from guys like Devontae Adams. We saw, I think it was 15 or 13 from Jamar Chase his rookie year. Like, double-digit is not kind of where Jefferson hits in the touchdown realm.
Imagine if those two guys shared an offense, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Could you imagine?
I know, it's crazy.
I wish, but I just see that LSU team again. But Minnesota is what we're talking about, not LSU. And let's talk about Jordan Addison because I know he is a we have a big fan of his on the show, and I'm not just talking about myself. I'm talking about Josh here. Jordan Addison, talk me into him.
So I'm going to leave the numbers for you because I know you have all those in your head because you just wrote about them. ClubFantasyFFL.com. It'll be coming out on Friday. But for me, I'm very much willing to bet on a rookie wide receiver that got Kenny Pickett drafted in the first round.
Yep.
Because Kenny Pickett is not all that great, in my opinion.
Yep.
So he's another Biletnikoff winner, former Biletnikoff winner. 1,500 yards, I believe, his sophomore year. Kind of a little bit of a downturn last year in the Pac-12, but I think a lot of that was just kind of, dealing with some injuries, some chemistry issues. But the kid's got some turn and burn. He got speed. He can get it. And you put someone like him in the slot, and I think that's really going to open up that offense because in college he averaged 14.3 yards per reception. And you factor that in with Jefferson, who we know can get down the field because of his game-breaking speed and ability with the ball in his hands. They need all of the passing that they can get because, again, you mentioned it. This defense is bad. Like, if they finish 33rd in total yards given up, I would not be shocked. And there's only 32 teams in the NFL.
They lost Eric Kendricks. They lost Patrick Peterson. They lost Darius Smith.
God.
It's going to only get worse. And it was pretty bad to begin with.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think and really there's a lot of speed on this team in general because KJ Osborn can get downfield. I mean, we saw 2 years ago when Thielen missed a lot of time with injuries, Osborn stepped in and had 7 touchdowns. Like, if you told me that Kirk Cousins threw 40 touchdowns this year, it's Kirk Cousins, so I'd be hard-pressed to believe it. But with the talent around him, I can see it. When you factor in Hawk and Osborn and Addison and Jefferson, like, there's opportunity for these guys.
And if you're going to bring up a team that throws 3 wide receivers out there, it's the Minnesota Vikings. Because it's part of why I'm so in on Jordan Addison, because this team went from a 46% 3 wide receiver rate prior to hiring Kevin O'Connell. They jumped to the 60s. I believe it was 67%, which was top 5 in the NFL. And that's how they want to run it. That's how he ran it with the Rams. That's how he wants to run it here. And that's why he spent a first-round pick to replace a old, weathered Adam Thielen with a young, spry Jordan Addison who had 1,600 yards with Kenny Pickett, who, again, I'm a Steelers fan. It's not going to work out, and we'll be picking in a couple of years, which is can't wait for that because we're going to miss out on Caleb. But that's not, again, the point of the segment here. I'm just really high on what the passing volume is going to be in Minnesota. They are going to be forced to pass the ball. It's what they want to do. It's what they're prepared to do. I think Addison, who's going off the board right now, wide receiver 39, wide receiver 41 on NCFF, the initials one of ADP, and 39 on Fantasy Pros. He's being drafted at his floor. Adam Thielen was a wide receiver 30 last year. Jordan Addison's a lot better than Adam Thielen. So we had I believe it was 10 duos, almost 10 duos that were wide receiver 2 or better while sharing the same field. Justin Jefferson does not make Jordan Addison not fantasy relevant. In fact, I would say he helps him. Any thoughts on Jordan Addison? Because I think Josh and I just wrote a love letter for Jordan Addison here, Kelly. So do you have any PSs to add on top of it?
The only thing I would add about Addison, if we dive into the next little bit about DFS, would be that early on, we may get good value on Addison before we're able to see what his final role is going to be, what his final production is going to be. When I say final, I'm talking like maybe the first 2 weeks, because by then, if he has a breakout game in week 1, let's say DFS dollars are going to be ridiculously high. DFS loves a good hero story. So I don't know that after week 1 or 2, Addison is going to be a good DFS buy when you have other places to put your money. So continuing on with DFS, I love Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson together in a matchup in DFS, depending on who they're playing, of course. But Cousins isn't typically going to be very expensive, leaving you a lot of room to pick up Justin Jefferson as your anchor, let's just say, and then fill in the gaps with whoever the matchup is. But I think this team in particular is a fave of mine for DFS just because of the quarterback receiver value that you're going to get.
Kirk Cousins was excellent for fantasy football last year, and despite how Josh wants to slander his good name, his 4,500 passing yard good name, there's just going to be so much passing volume with Minnesota, and it combines for such a high floor, and then you get Justin Jefferson stacked with that. It's only going to be even better. And the public perception with Kirk Cousins always being negative keeps that DFS price down. So I'm
exactly
1,000% on board. And people don't want to play him either because everyone thinks with DFS you need everyone to hit. You just need everyone. You just need people to be in the top 10. And depending on how you do it, I don't want you know how DFS goes. So.
No, yeah. I get it. I totally, exactly the same page that I'm on. I think that he gets, you get very little percentage on that buy-in. So you're getting a great stack where somebody else pretty much pick any other matchup and they're going to pick the other quarterback over Cousins in their roster. So I think it's a good matchup, a good stack.
Love me some Kirk Cousins. But let's talk about that running game real quick because we touched on it a little bit before with Alexander Mattison, but Dalvin Cook's gone. Kevin O'Connell has been talking up Alexander Mattison. They spent a day 3 pick on Dwayne McBride. You got Ty Chandler, who was spent most of last year injured. You got a special teamer in Keenan Ngwangu, who has been a long, very dark hole of dynasty of a big favorite over there. Is it truly the Alexander Mattison show, or is he we're going to see a mix of players? Any thoughts there, Josh, on the run game?
I don't think they're going to stray too much from what they've done in the past with Dalvin Cook, in all honesty. I think the biggest thing really is just going to be, is Mattison going to last for 17 games, right? I know we have that question with all running backs, but you're talking about a guy that's been in the league now for 4 years, and this is the first time he's been given a chance to be the full-time starter. So I think it is a legitimate question. We've seen how effective he can be as a starting running back, and I know some people will sit there and they'll reference, oh, well, he only had 2 yards per carry last year or whatever he ended up with. I mean, Dalvin Cook played all 17 games, if I'm not mistaken, last year. Like, you're putting a guy that's built for volume in as a spot start or, a relief role to be like maximally efficient. And that's just not his game. Like, he's going to be a grinder. He's going to move the pile, and then he's going to use his size to body defenses into those chunk yards. And that's what he did so well filling in for Dalvin Cook. So if they can utilize him in that type of role, I think he still offers some pass catching volume. But again, with the 3 wide receivers they have with TJ Hockenson, I don't think he's going to command the level of targets that we've seen in the past go to Dalvin Cook. But I think the yards will be there, the touchdowns will be there, and he's a solid RB2 in that front.
Appreciate seeing a UK follow over here as well, Mystery Sauce. Good to see you in the chat. Kelly, any thoughts on Alexander Mattison or the running back game in general?
I think the only thing I was going to add about Mattison is that could be another good DFS pick for your team depending on the matchup. I don't think it's going to be super pricey. Potentially later in the season, once we see that maybe this is just what he needed. But to start, I think relatively unknown as a name when we talk about who we were building a team around. So Mattison could be a great DFS pick.
I'm on board with Mattison this year. It feels too good to be true, but I feel like we're just overthinking it if we're going to be passing on Mattison in drafts. And I feel like he's being drafted close to his floor around that middling RB2 range, just because he's going to get that much volume to begin with. Again, we just brought up other names. DeAndre Swift, how many touches is he going to see? How many touches can Rachaad White actually hold and make use of? And then meanwhile, we have a pretty good scoring offense and a very high workload coming in with Alexander Mattison. So I'm on board as an RB2 in most formats. And if you want to overdraft him, feel free to. If people want to underdraft him, that'll be me because I'll be doing that. So either way, I'll bring up Joe's takes here. You touched on it before, Josh. KJ Osborn, somebody I've been a deep fan of as well. Did a whole thread on him last year. Joe wanted to bring him up as my guy in this relative to draft cost, or the sleeper, I should say. And his IDP pick, Harrison Smith, obviously, because Harrison Smith has been a value in DB for as long as I've been alive. And you also want to bring up Marcus Davenport, who I love as a highlight here. signing a prove-it deal with Minnesota to rush off the edge. Has flashed the talent, has never stayed on the field, coming over from New Orleans. Will be replacing Zadarius Smith, and he'll get a lot of opportunity opposite of Danielle Hunter. So I think Marcus Davenport's a fantastic grab, and I'm glad Joe wanted to bring him up. So that does conclude this episode of No Pun Intended. I really want to give you a huge thanks to you, Kelly, because this has been a blast. Awesome meeting you first of all as well. This is my first time talking to you, and it's been awesome. So thank you for tuning in. So tell everyone where they can find you and all your stuff.
Well, thank you. You guys gave me such a glowing opening, and I feel so bad for our Wi-Fi taking a poop while we're trying to record.
Look, everybody needs bathroom breaks, Kelly. It happens, even technology. So, we do what we can.
You can find me at Kelly in Phoenix on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else that I'm trying to live, I guess. You'll find me every week in August at Women of Fantasy Football, our big push interviewing women in sports media. Very exciting, benefiting Galvanize. You can find me weekly on the Club Fantasy YouTube channel. Tuesday nights talking golf DFS. Who's your caddy? And we already spoke about our friend Austin and the shows that he's doing. We are trying to put together a DFS show together also for football. So you might be seeing my face even more. Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I think we would all love to see your face even more. So hopefully we'll get that show going as soon as possible. But I want to bring up what Josh has been echoing the entire show. This Look Inside series in full swing. Again, the write-ups on Keenan Allen as well as Mark Andrews already on the website at clubfantasyffl.com. And my piece on Jordan Addison will be coming out on Friday, so be sure to check back in for that. And again, 3 previews coming every single week on clubfantasyffl.com. So be sure to be subscribed to the YouTube page. If you're not, you're missing all the amazing podcasts. Kelly mentioned one right there about Who's Your Caddy on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. EST. As well as Maka Like It Hot on Mondays at 11 a.m. Her Story in the Making, which is also on Better Sports Network. Summer School now debuting as well, a best ball short segment show. I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it, but a temporary show on walking you through how to do your best balls this summer, which is incredibly important because that's how all of us are trying to make some money right now. And, of course, my own Dynasty After Party with Joel Worth on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for tuning in. You can follow me at Michael_Sicoli, and you can follow Josh here at The One Hudsonian. And, of course, Club Fantasy FFL at Club Fantasy FFL. So thank you all for tuning in. Defense wins championship option. Offense wins fantasy football. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night. Have a good evening, everybody.